Last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin threatened Turkish President Recep Erdogan that he will restore the Constantinople Istanbul to Christendom and protect the Russian maritime security by liberating the Danadas and Bosphorus Straits, Pentagon sources say. This has been the plan all along as borders will be withdrawn, with Turkey expelled from Cyprus and Balkanized thereat. This may be what prompted Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu to fly to Iran and seek peace between the Sunni and Shia factions of Islam. If the two sides agree to a peace deal, this could mean 1384-year-old split between the two factions of Islam might end. That is what the Turks are hoping for to counter the Russian-Western military alliance that was formalized when the Pope and the Russian Orthodox Patriarch met on February the 12th, a first since 962 years ago. However, the situation might not be that easy to resolve because of deep Turkish involvement in the Nazi coup d'etat that took place in the U.S. on September 11, 2001. It now seems the choice of that date for the attack on the U.S. was linked to the fact that September 11, 1683 was the date that the last Turkish attempt to convert Christian Arab by force of arms failed. This was when the siege of Vienna was lifted by a Christian alliance just hours before a giant Turkish gunpowder mine was set to blow open the walls protecting Vienna. The Nazi-Turkish links has deep roots in history. It can be traced to Hitler's number 3, Rudolf Hess, who was brought up in Egypt. His resentment of the West traces to the fact that his family's fortune was confiscated by the victorious Allies after World War I. Hess was also a member of the Turkish secret society with Asian historical links to German society in the Italian fascist P2 Freemason Lodge. These groups have long sought revenge against the West for the destructions of the German, Habsburg, and Ottoman Turkish empires after that war. In a run-up to World War II, according to British intelligence and other sources, the Germans and the Turks trained hundreds of thousands of Muslim Brotherhood activists to fight against British and French rule in the Middle East. They sent many of these trained fighters and pseudo-Muslim fundamentalists to Saudi Arabia after World War II. This group morphed into Al-Qaeda and now exists. The latest maneuver has been to flood Europe with Muslim refugees in what the Pope has denounced as an Arab invasion. The Turks and the Saudi plus Nazi allies retaliate to these criticisms by killing 4 nuns and 12 others in Yemen. The perpetrators of this attack are not Muslim, but rather worship an entity they call the Black Sun, but which true believers have long known as Satan. The satanic network is now being systematically dismantled in ways that are visible even in the controlled Western corporate media. The rise of U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump is the key example of this. Last week, Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, on U.S. nationwide Fox TV, said the Republican establishment was terrified of Trump because he was not one of them. He has not been through the initiation rites. He does not belong to the secret society. This has prompted multiple death threats against Trump, starting with the first George Bush, but including others. However, the fact is this time it's the Bushes who are running scared. According to Pentagon sources, the recent trip by Russian Orthodox head Kirill to Paraguay was the message to the Bushes they are not safe anywhere. The arrested Mexican drug lord and Bush agent El Chapo is being deprived of sleep until he agrees to be extradited to the U.S. to testify against the Bush or Clinton mafia, the sources add. Also, the takedown of Hillary Clinton is moving along quite rapidly. Hillary's lesbian lover and aide, Huma Abedin, has been indicted. Her IT guy has been given immunity in exchange for testimony, and a grand jury is busy interviewing people to see who will be subpoenaed for upcoming indictment. Charges will include leaking state secrets and using the Clinton Foundation like a secret government, among other things, FBI sources say. Another obvious sign that is not business as usual is the fact that David the Rothschild, head of the Swiss band of Rothschild banking family, is on the run from the palace. David the Rothschild name came up frequently in negotiation between the White Dragon Society and other Western secret societies before the March 11, 2011 tsunami and nuclear attack against Japan. After 11 March, the Rothschild representative Dr. Michael van der Meer told this writer, the attack was aimed at forcing 50 million Japanese to move from Greater Tokyo to North Korea, where the Rothschild planned to establish their new Asian headquarters. A while after 11 March attacks, the Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan told a packed press conference at the Foreign Correspondent Club that he had been strongly encouraged after the attacks to evacuate Greater Tokyo, despite the fact pretty much the entire Western press corps and all the major Japanese news media outlets had reporters there. Nobody reported on these comments. Now suddenly, Kan's story of being pressed to evacuate 50 million people is suddenly all over the world's news outlets as the 5th anniversary of this terror attack approaches. While Rothschild is presently wanted for fraud, it's only a matter of time before his and his family's role in this mass murder incident will also be investigated. The Rothschild colony of brainwashed Europeans known as Israel is also under serious siege now. U.S. intelligence has told their Russian counterparts that Israel is suspected to using Turkey as a proxy to avoid Russian wrath in the recent murder of Russian GRU military intelligence chief Igor Sergin. This has backfired because it has only deepened Russian and U.S. military and intelligence cooperation, the U.S. sources say. To underline this, top U.S. General Jose Dunford went to Israel on March 3rd and warned the Israeli not to assassinate Trump or any other of the good guys. They were also told to stop any inflation of terrorists into Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Furthermore, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden will be in Israel on March the 8th to warn them to stop cooperating with either Turkey or Saudi Arabia. The Chinese have also shown what side of the fence they are sitting on by instituting a 6-day visa-free program for the Shanghai region that includes 51 countries like the USA, Japan, Russia, France, and the UK, but deliberately excludes Israel. The Japanese government is also restricting visas for Israelis. Meanwhile, things are also heating up on the economic front. World shipping remains in the worst slump since the Vikings. The Nazi puppet regime in Ukraine has become bankrupt and dysfunctional, while major Western banks continue to survive by means of fraudulent accounting. Now, the Canadian government has publicly admitted it has sold off the last of its official gold reserves. This is interesting because the Canadians are probably the last people on earth willing to trade gold for the Federal Reserve Board debt notes, mistakenly called the US dollars. The Bank for International Settlement in Switzerland, world headquarters for privately owned central banks, itself is mostly certainly in big trouble. Of its 21 governors, only 4 are not European or North Korean. Even the BIS may be running out of the gold at this point. That may be why intrigue is heating up on the gold front. While Dragon Society allies in Darwin, Australia say the US military has 4,000 troops training for some sort of special operation. Darwin is the closest place in Australia to the Kabul-controlled Freeport-McMoran gold mine, a Nazi submarine base in Papua. The US military might be planning a move on it, the source speculated. A CIA source in Southeast Asia, meanwhile, was intrigued by this newsletter's report that Persian royal family gold in Thailand was making its way to Hong Kong. He said the Persian gold had been made slightly radioactive so that it could be traced by satellite, and that the report was right to say Hong Kong was where it was ended up. The Asian allies are now saying the gold will be made available at a 13% discount from the market price for minimum orders of 20 tons. Of a 13% discount, 10% was to finance the new future planning agency and 3% was for commissions, they said. Proof of the gold's existence is supposed to be provided to the White Dragon Society in Hong Kong, possibly later this month. Chinese government sources say when the proof is provided, it will be made public, the White Dragon Society says. As all of the above shows, the multiple sources agree something very big and worldwide is coming down. Many insiders say it could happen as early as this month or April. We shall see how events unfold. One thing to watch for is to see if anything happens around March 24th, when U.S. corporate government spokesperson Barack Obama visits Nazi South American headquarters in Bariloche, Argentina.